So.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Marpy, the first selectman here in Westport, and I want to welcome you tonight to this gathering. Too often this past year, we've gathered on this spot for whether you want to call them rallies, vigils, gatherings, whether it was about George Floyd or anti-Asian behavior, and tonight anti-Semitism. But I'm heartened by the fact that it reflects the quality of this community of Westport, and that we are here to support people who, in one way or another, feel the hatred, the dislike, the vengeance of people who just don't understand that this is a world made up of so many different people and so many different qualities. So thank you all for being here tonight. I particularly want to acknowledge the fact that our Congressman, Jim Himes, has also joined us here tonight. Jim, thank you for being here. We know we can count on your support constantly in the kind of cause we represent. I'm here tonight to specifically read a statement that I put out last week recognizing the anti-Semitism that has reared its ugly head. Unfortunately, it never really goes away, does it? But it has certainly become more pronounced. And then I'm also here to represent Team Westport, Harold Bailey, who would normally be here to comment, is out of town tonight, so I will read his statement as well. But let me begin. On behalf of the town of Westport, I want to reiterate that acts of discrimination, racism, and anti-Semitism will not be tolerated in our community. Over the past year, as a country, we witnessed the murder of George Floyd, terrifying attacks against the Asian and Pacific Islander communities, and countless other acts of hatred and discrimination. And in recent days, we've seen acts of anti-Semitism strikingly close to us in New York City. Let there be no doubt, anti-Semitism has no place in our community. We respect our Jewish neighbors and visitors. Westport is an inclusive community that embraces diversity and has always celebrated cultures and different religious beliefs. We continue to respect everyone, regardless of their race, creed, or ethnic origin. I encourage all in our community to reaffirm these values during this challenging period. I stand with our friends and neighbors who feel threatened by these terrible activities. Make no mistake, Westport is focused on protecting all residents and visitors. We've stepped up our security in and around our synagogues and temples, and we'll do anything necessary to keep our community safe and free from discrimination and hate. And from Harold Bailey, I'll read his statement on behalf of Team Westport. That's an acronym for Together Effectively Achieving Multiculturalism. And I know there are a lot of members of the Team Westport committee has been a part of this community for over 20 years. And I'm proud that we have that organization, and particularly in this past year, how important it's been to us as a community to help us grapple with some very, very difficult issues. So here are Harold's words. I regret being away and unable to join you in person for this event. However, on behalf of Team Westport and me personally, I want to extend our strongest possible support for standing against the toxicity of anti-Semitism. For us, that stand is not one iota away from the position we have held for the past 18 years of our existence as a town entity. At crisis points, and more importantly, when there have been no crises, we have and will continue to stand relentlessly against this and related kinds of hate. For while specific targets may vary by religion, race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, the hatred of others has common source and substance. We must keep in mind that if any members of our Westport community are threatened with the scourge of that hate, we must all stand collectively to address it. Now more than ever, we must all stand vigilantly and together. Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for standing with us this evening. And again, thank you, Congressman Himes, for your support and your presence here today and always. It really means the world to us. I'm Jeremy Wiederhorn. I am the rabbi at TCS here in Westport and the chair of the Clergy Association of Westport and Weston. We've gathered here this evening almost 100 years to the day after the Tulsa race massacre, one of the single worst racial incidents of racial violence in our country's history. We've gathered here this evening as we begin Pride Month, standing in solidarity with our siblings in the LGBTQ community. We've gathered here this evening following an upswing of violence and anti-Semitism in New York City and Los Angeles, throughout Europe and the entire world. This evening, we stand united in saying no to violence and hatred and bigotry and discrimination against Asian American and Pacific Islanders, against African Americans and all people of color, against members of the LGBT community, against Muslims, against Sikhs, against Christians, against Jews. Quite simply, we stand united against hate. When planning this rally to stand against anti-Semitism in particular, there were those who felt that we should have been gathering in private, not in such a public place like this. They were afraid of what might happen. When Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. walked arm in arm in Selma, Alabama, they too may have been afraid, but they marched forward nonetheless. And if Martin Luther King Jr. were with us today, I believe that he would repeat the words that are attributed to him. You declare, my friend, that you do not hate the Jews, you are merely anti-Zionist. And I say, let the truth ring forth from the high mountaintops. Let it echo through the valleys of God's green earth. When people criticize Zionism, they mean Jews. This is God's own truth. Anti-Semitism, the hatred of the Jewish people, has been and remains a blot on the soul of mankind. In this, we are in full agreement. So know also this, that anti-Zionist is inherently anti-Semitic and ever will be so. So my friends, as we gather here this evening in Westport, Connecticut, we ought not be afraid. Our people have spent thousands of years being afraid, and we are done being afraid. We are blessed to live in a time when we have a state of Israel, and we are proud to have strong and committed and genuine allies who stand with us. Thank you all. Thank you. With your love and your support, we stand here together in strength so that none of us should ever be afraid.
Beloved, here we are again, standing shoulder to shoulder on Jesup Green, raising our voices in unison to condemn acts of bigotry, to say by our presence, by our words, this is not okay. Not the last eruption of hate or the one before that, nor this most recent, not any of them. How many times have we stood here together just in this last 12 months? Often enough to remind ourselves and one another that showing up matters, that human well-being deserves to be defended, that answering acts of bigotry with communal expressions of love, respect, and deep listening can make all the difference. Because when we show up for each other, when we bear witness to the pain and honor the human spirit in all its diverse expressions, we participate in crafting the world we want to inhabit, a world in which all peoples can thrive. Tonight, We stand with Jewish siblings who have suffered a spike in anti-Semitic violence in our communities. I stand here as the pastor of Saugatuck Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Westport, and as a member of the interfaith clergy of Westport and Weston. My name is Reverend Allison Buttrick Patton, and I stand here because my faith teaches me that we are all siblings, called together to do the hard, sometimes harrowing, but always holy work of mending a broken world. That work, friends, takes courage and patience and fierce love. It takes rallies and also relationship building. It takes moments like this one and a lifetime of showing up for one another. I am grateful to those who invited us to gather tonight and honored to stand with Jewish and Muslim colleagues and neighbors. How many times will we have to show up together here on Jesup Green? As many times as it takes. As many times as it takes to outpace the fear, hurt, and hostility that nips at our heels, as often as it takes to make sure that our acts of love outnumber acts of violence, as often as it takes to mend the whole world, as often as it takes. Amen.
I am Rabbi Shloim Landa from the Chabad of Fairfield. In the daily Amida, we pray, Baruchenu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad. Bless us, our Father, together as one. When there is unity, there is blessing. When there is unity, there is strength. And tonight, as all of us are here, together as one, to stand tall and declare that the scourge of anti-Semitism cannot and must not be tolerated, our unity is indeed a blessing. We must do everything in our power to ensure that the world knows that anti-Semitism is absolutely never, under any circumstances, acceptable. And we must be crystal clear that the recent war between Israel and Hamas is not the cause of the recent increase in anti-Semitism, but simply an excuse for it. Anti-Semitism dates back more than 3,000 years. In fact, it is even discussed in the ancient Talmud. The Talmud explains why Mount Sinai, upon which the Torah was given to Moses, was called Mount Sinai. The Talmud compares it to the Hebrew word sina, which means hatred. And it explains that it was called Mount Sinai because when the Torah descended into the world, it was accompanied by hatred, anti-Semitism. Instinctively, there were those who felt threatened by the Torah's revolutionary ideas. Concepts like equal justice for all, the value of a single life, the quest for peace, and the importance of charity. These ideas and approaches were completely at odds with the conventional wisdom of the time, and they met fierce resistance. Anti-Semites may cloak their hatred in all sorts of rationalizations, but at its core, and as the Talmud makes clear, anti-Semitism is a depraved person's reactions to the beautiful values and ideals that Judaism represents. And why is it, you may ask, that it's important for us to understand the origins of anti-Semitism? Why not simply focus all of our energies on eradicating it? Because if anti-Semitism is a depraved person's reactions to morality and goodness, then anti-Semitism ought to increase Jewish pride, not diminish it. Far from making us cower, understanding anti-Semitism should impel us to stand taller and prouder. Wear our yarmulkes, stars of David, chai necklaces more visibly, display mezuzahs on our doorposts, and celebrate the beauty and values that Judaism represents. Now, make no mistake, we absolutely must do everything in our power in the realm of practicality to stamp out anti-Semitism. We must take all necessary measures to protect and defend ourselves from this senseless hatred. But we must never run and hide from whom we are. We are not history's victims. Instead, we must stand proudly and quadruple our efforts to stand strong with the ideals that have illuminated the world for over 3,000 years. Am Yisrael Chai.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Ginsburg. I'm the head of the Anti-Defamation League office here in Connecticut. And I'm a proud Westport resident and really privileged to get to work with so many great leaders here in Fairfield County. I am not here to make a speech today. I'm here to introduce someone who I think you're going to really learn something from and be inspired by. But I just wanted to say in my introduction that we're in one of those moments where everyone's looking at, everyone of you and so many people are saying, what can I do about this? And I think it's one of these fights that we're going to always be fighting, and it's going to happen. We're going to win by working on multiple levels. Yesterday, I was in Hartford with the governor and the attorney general, Senator Blumenthal, as we announced a new hate crimes council for the state of Connecticut, which is a really great group of people. And I look forward to hearing from you if you think that that council should be working on certain things. Today, with help of Congressman Himes and our senators and congressmen, the Congress passed and it was signed into law. The No Hate Act was passed. We're going to be getting more resources to work with members of law enforcement and ensure that they have the resources they need to fight anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. But I think we are also in a moment where we're seeing new manifestations because of partisan politics, because of social media. Anti-Semitism is taking on all new forms. Some things don't change. You all still want to know, what can I do about it? And about maybe 20 years ago, ADL created a program where we empower young people to find their own voice against anti-Semitism. How do they learn how to confront it, how to process it, how to teach other people about it? And we are the only region in the country of 25 regions that has what's called a teen trainer program. And one of those teen trainers is here tonight to share with you her personal story. Her name is Samantha Renzulli. She's from Fairfield. And what she has experienced and what she has gone through will probably speak much more than I possibly could about how you all and we all can do something about this. So thanks for that.
Thank you for your introduction. My name is Samantha Renzulli, and I'm a junior at Fairfield Ward High School, and I've been a teen trainer with the ADL since my freshman year. And before that, I participated in their programs when they visited my synagogue. As a teen trainer, I've interacted with many kids, teens, parents, and leaders. And we've had many important discussions. And what I've come to understand is that no single person can be an expert in how to combat anti-Semitism. What each person can do is make up the community dedicated to supporting one another. We have programs and panels and resources, so many resources that I've been grateful for and learned from, employed and taught others. But the strongest resource we can provide is that strength of unity. I've seen firsthand through the ADL the support and strength that all generations are so eager to provide, and that fuels my conviction in combating anti-Semitism. With pride for the community I'm defending, my sense of why I choose to stand up is strengthened. In programs, there's a resounding message that people don't know what to do. We do present resources, but there's a strength that we cannot give you, and that is required from within you. And it is the strength to stand up, the strength to realize that there's no such thing as a Jewish joke, as they are so often called. Because anything that degrades and devalues and delegitimizes someone's value or values is not a joke. Through all these sessions, though people present uncertainties of how to respond, we know that there's a theme of knowing that they need to respond. I see a passion for which people relate to Judaism, which inspires them to stand up. And that's where I most clearly see why I am a trainer and why I take such pride as a Jew. Because as a people, we are strong and resilient in each battle, which we do not with spite, but with pride. I understand how important this identity is to me and our community and why it's so important to protect it. Every ADL event has open spaces, spaces for people to share experiences they've had, share questions they have, and questions that they wish they knew the answers to. And in these spaces, I hear stories, and in these stories, I feel not alone. From teen trainers to kids, I hear stories I could have never imagined and stories that are all too familiar. All unique, each story shows me that individual struggles are struggles for us all. Struggles we face not as an individual, but as a community. I am honored to have been asked to speak and share my experience, and there's so much I could and would love to share. But if there's one thing that you can take away, it's that the strength to fight anti-Semitism comes from the strength of which you are protecting. You are protecting and standing up for a community that needs you and a community that supports you. When confronted with anti-Semitism, it's really scary. It's scary. It's scary feeling that the weight of your response, the weight that it holds, represents the entire Jewish community, and not knowing what to say or to do. But when I think back on the people so dedicated to teaching and to learning what to do, I realize I am not standing up alone, and neither are any of you. The ADL is the resource. It brings together our stories and supports our endeavors, but it's our community strength that protects it. And it is our community strength that fuels us and what we fight for. And together, fueled by the pride of what we value, we are stronger against anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Greg Wall. I'm the rabbi at Beit Kavarim Synagogue here in Westport. First of all, I want to thank our civic leaders and all the clergy in the community who've come out from all faiths, denominations, to stand together with us. Last week, beginning of the week, I got a couple of emails from congregants telling me that they were afraid. One gave me a capsule review of all of the anti-Semitic acts that had happened in the previous 70s. I had no idea there were so many. And scan news headlines frequently. No idea. I could understand the fear. I want to contrast that with the feeling we all felt when we got here assembling. This was the first time in 15 months that people have been able to be out in public and not be afraid, to enjoy each other's company. Imagine being afraid to walk down a street. This afternoon, I revisited an old but very powerful film called Not in Our Town. Did anybody see it? It talks about something that happened in Billings, Montana, about 20 years ago. And there were skinheads who threw a brick through the bedroom window of a 6-year-old Jewish boy. Within the next few days, 10,000 homes in Billings, Montana had a menorah in the window. And they really gave us a model for how a community can fight hate. I just want to share 5 ideas that came out with that we could all identify with. 1, speak words of hate. And in our community, words of hate are very sophisticated. We've got a very bright, highly educated community, but no one is exempt from having ideas like this. We got to say something. We have to respond quickly to the need of people who are targeted. We have to stand up. I'll walk with you. We have to be there in person. Fighting hate can't be confined to showing up to a rally. We have to be there. We have to make our stand broadly visible. Westport is a community of lawn signs. We're really great about supporting our candidates. Can we be as great about supporting hate? Finally, we can't back down. We cannot retreat. Anti-Semitism these days is a little different. It used to be focused from white nationalists and the very far right. We knew who the haters were. Today, we're seeing people who look just like us with a deep anti-Semitic attitude. And nothing drives that home deeper than the surge during the recent hostilities in the Middle East. Think about it. What does a Jew in Fairfield County, Connecticut, have to do with any action in the Middle East? In fact, this is a very liberal community. If we speak to the majority of Jews here, chances are they will agree with criticism of governments on both sides of the conflict. This is not a political action. I want to give us a hopeful message as I close my remarks. Last week, I stopped off at my favorite gas station on the Post Road, and it was late at night, and I saw a new clerk behind the counter. I wear a uniform, he saw my yarmulke, and we started talking. And all of a sudden, he started talking about God, and he was talking about his experience. It was the very end of Ramadan, and I realized I was speaking to a charming Palestinian who grew up in Jordan, has lived here for about 15 years. And we had a wonderful conversation, and we lamented the erosion of family values in the country, and we talked about the commonalities between our cultures. And as I was getting ready to leave, and it was hard to leave, he didn't want me to go, he was enjoying the conversation. He stuck out his hand and he said, Muslims, Jews, we're brothers. And I took his hand. We have so much potential. We have so much potential. And I'm so encouraged by the fact that we can stand together tonight I hope we can stand together each and every day. Thank you. God bless you all.
Good evening. My name is Kanwar Paul Singh. I am a Sikh, and I'm here representing my place of worship, which is the Norwalk Sikh place of worship. We also call it the Gurudwara. We all have been rattled with the recent increase in hate crimes, but especially the recent uptick in the acts of violence against our Jewish communities. There is no place for such behavior in a civil society, which provides a path for people to cohabitate in peace, regardless of their color, race, or religion. Examples where our gurus and our leaders have stood up against injustice and discrimination. So today, representing my place of worship, I stand here in solidarity to our brothers and sisters of the Jewish community. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Rabbis Schultz and Wiederhorn and Wall, and of course to the Federation for Jewish Philanthropy of Upper Fairfield County for gathering us all together tonight. Some of you who have lived in this area for a while might remember that straight behind me, this building over here, that's now the Basso Cafe, used to be the Fine Arts Movie Theater. That gets a clap. In 1994, I sat in that theater with some of my friends from Staples High School to see the movie Schindler's List. Never did I imagine that 27 years later, I would be standing in this place to address the scourge of anti-Semitism that continues to plague our world. You see, as I watched the film, I was moved and connected to the horrors and struggles of our generation's past, but I was hopeful and confident that we lived in a different world, that anti-Semitism, at least in its more vicious and violent forms, was a thing of the past, that we lived safely and proudly as Jews in a generation and in a society where we were valued and our differences were celebrated. I did not imagine that as a mother, I would have to answer my own child asking the question, why do people hate us? And I never imagined that despite the subsequent decades of education in Jewish history and work in the community, that I would be so ill-equipped to answer that question. I suppose that every generation before us asked this question as well. But now we are in a new age of anti-Semitism. Like a virus, it mutates and it grows to fit a changing society and political climate and culture. And we are right now at a turning point in the course of history that must awaken us out of our complacency. We live in an age where the truth is relative. Distorted facts, manipulated through memes, sound bites, one-sided and oversimplified assertions foment division in a way like never before. In modern day America, anti-Semitism has become the last acceptable expression of discrimination. From the extremes of the political right and left, we are at the same time an unwelcome minority and an oppressor. And from some who champion the rights of other minority and marginalized groups, we hear a perverse justification for anti-Semitism, couched in morality, conspiracies about Jewish control, delegitimization of Israel's right to exist. Jews can be tolerated, but only if we stay in our lane, as victims, not as people with self-determination and the right to raise ourselves up in safety, peace, and prosperity, and to live proudly as Jews. Over the past several weeks during the recent conflict in Israel, there has been a 75% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the United States. There is no excuse or justification for this violence, with Jews attacked in Times Square and in sidewalk cafes in LA, when synagogues are targeted or vandalized, when Jewish students are harassed on campuses. This is not activism, it is not progressive, it is anti-Semitism, pure and simple. And it is incumbent upon all of us, Jews and non-Jews, and all people of good conscience everywhere, to stand up and declare that anti-Semitism is real, it is pervasive, it is virulent, and it will not be tolerated. Throughout history, Jews have been on the forefront of the fight for justice for all of the oppressed, the marginalized, guided by the fundamental principle of Torah, which teaches, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. We have come out for every cause of injustice. We have fought for civil rights across race, creed, religion, sexual orientation. We have protested unjust wars. We have championed the cause of the marginalized among us, and now we beg of our neighbors, now is the time that we ask you to stand up for us. Stand with us and stand up when ancient tropes of distrust and conspiracy theories are touted as legitimate discourse. Stand with us and stand up in polite company where Jewish jokes are tacitly tolerated. Stand with us when, instead of critique of politics and political leaders, Israel's detractors deny and challenge its very right to exist as a sovereign nation. Stand with us and stand up when our children are bullied and harassed in schools and universities when they support Israel or associate with Jewish organizations and synagogues. Stand with us and stand up when we are targeted, beaten, harassed in cities across this country and all over the world just because we are Jews. Stand with us and stand up when our elected leaders traffic in anti-Semitism for their own political gain, and when others in positions of power remain complicit or silent. We say to our neighbors, just as you stand up for others and proudly say the words, Black Lives Matter, love is love, stop Asian hate, stand up and say the words for us, stop anti-Semitism. To those of this generation and the next, the young Jews who are struggling to make sense of who they are, stand up and be proud and embrace your place, your responsibility in this chain of Jewish civilization. Ours is a legacy that is fundamentally good and enduring, rich with the history and values that continue to bring innumerable gifts to the world. Stand with us and be leaders in a vibrant future for all of us. Let us not live in fear, but with hope and purpose. Let us continue to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility. Let us come together in unity and strength. in honor of our ancestors and for the future of our children, as partners with God in the repair of our broken world. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Weisberg. I'm the CEO of the Federation for Jewish Philanthropy of Upper Fairfield County. I'm so grateful to see all of you, and I'm so sad that we had to gather together. So grateful to see all of you and so sad that we've had to gather together. There has been an unbelievably sad increase in anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic incidents, both in our neighborhoods and around the world. And one of the questions I've been asking myself over the past couple of weeks is why do people do this? What drives people to do such terrible things? And I've come to the conclusion that there's two things. One is that the people who do these terrible things are trying to drive a wedge between us within our community and trying to drive a wedge between us and the greater community. And what I want to say to those people, whether they're out here or whether they're watching online, we don't get together like this every week. There are some people here that this has been a hug fest that I haven't seen in over a year. You try to drive us apart. You've made us sad and you've made us stronger. We don't come together every week, and you did this. You bring us together when you try to wedge us apart. The second reason I believe people do this is because they're trying to drive a wedge between us and our extended Jewish family in Israel. They're trying to drive a wedge between us and our family in Israel. Now, we're a large group. Not all of us are Jews, but for those of us who are Jewish, we all pray a little bit differently. We all do Shabbat a little bit differently. Our Seders are a little bit different. We all have a slightly different relationship with this country, with America. And all of us have a slightly different relationship with Israel. And that's okay, we can have our opinions. Nobody has more opinions about Israel than Israelis do. So it's okay that we have different opinions, that we have different relationships. I want to tell you about my relationship with Israel. I first went to Israel when I was 16 years old. I've been there probably 15 or 16 times since, more than probably a lot of you, less than I'm sure some of you too. I'm hoping to go for a week in August, and I hope some of you will come with me. Some of my dearest friends are in Israel, and my relationship with Israel is that I love Israel like I love my own daughters. I love Israel like I love my own children. What does that mean? Well, first of all, I think that my daughters are the most beautiful in the world. Correct that? I know that my daughters are the most beautiful in the world. I will go see my daughters whenever I can. And in public, I do nothing but brag about my daughters. I cannot say more good things about them. Those of you who know me well probably get tired of hearing it. And every once in a while, my daughters do something I disagree with. Every once in a while. Pretty rarely. My daughters do something that lets me down, but to be honest, every once in a while, I do something that they disagree with. Every once in a while, I do something that lets them down, and we sit down together, and we talk about it together, and we still love each other, because that's what it means to be a family. And there is nothing that will ever separate. There's nothing that will ever drive a wedge between me and my daughters. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the circumstances, I will do anything that I can to care for them when they need me. And at the end of the day, I will do everything that I can to help my daughters achieve every dream that I have for them, that they have for themselves. I will do anything I can to care for them when they need me, anything that I can to help them achieve their dreams. And nothing makes me prouder than our federation, as an expression of our community's support, 2 weeks ago, made a special allocation of $36,000 for trauma relief in Israel because we care about our family when our family needs us. And the very same week, we made an allocation to support supplemental education for Ethiopian students in Israel because we want them to have the quality of education and opportunity that everybody else does. We made a special allocation to support Home in the Valley, the first ever LGBTQ organization in our partnership community of Afula. And I'm so proud to say that on the second day of Pride Month. And we made the first ever grant that we did to the Mishkan Museum of Art for a program aimed at bringing young Arab and Jewish students together to learn and build relationships together, because we care for our family when they're in need, and we do everything that we can to help them achieve the dreams that they have for themselves. As Theodore Herzl said, "In tirtzu, in so agada," if you will it, if we make it but achieve our dreams. Those whose goal it is to try to separate us from Israel make us sad, and they make that bond stronger. And I stand here today before you, David Weisberg, a 25-year veteran of Jewish communal service and the great-great-grandson of Yosel Gulak, who was killed during a pogrom in 1919 in Obadivka, Ukraine, here with friends whose grandparents and great-grandparents were killed in places like Auschwitz and places like Dachau, here with all of you, here's forefathers and ancestors, over 6,000 years faced anti-Semitism and persecution in places like Spain and Algeria and Yemen and Russia and even America, to say those things that you do make us sad and they make us stronger. You will not make a wedge between us. You will not drive a wedge between us and the people of Israel. Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel, the Jewish people live. Thank you so much. May we gather together only in happy times.
A prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu Sheba Shamayim, Sor Yisrael v'goalo, Berech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, Hagen Alecha be'evrat hasdecha, Ufros Alecha Sukat Shlemecha, Ushlach Orcha v'amicha l'roshecha, Sarecha v'yotzecha, V'taknem v'etzah tova milfanecha, V'natata shalom ba'aretz, V'simchat olam le'oshvecha, V'nomar. Amen.
Amen. Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and your truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who live there. Amen.
Amen.
Erev Tov, good evening. What a beautiful sight this is, to see us all gathered like this in unity, togetherness. So in Judaism, there is a prayer that we offer in the evening, the Hashkivenu, a prayer that God might lie us down in peace and raise us up renewed so that we can stand together to do God's work for another day, to bring light unto the nations. We are told that as Jews, we are to bring light unto the nations, unto the people. And one spark of light can extinguish even the deepest
and love can extinguish darkness and hate. As my colleague, Rabbi Wall, reflected in his remarks about the few minutes that he spent at the gas station, finding a new friend and discovering so much commonality. There's so much more that we have in common than that which divides us. So as we prepare to say goodbye this evening, I offer the Hashkivenu prayer, and a prayer that there might be love and understanding among us and among all peoples. So much fear, so much hatred comes from misunderstanding. I'd like to invite my colleagues to join me. Hashkivenu, if you'd like to come up, no pressure. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Ashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Ashkivenu, Shalom. V'hamidenu, Shamreinu l'chaim. Uvros aleinu, Sukat shlomecha. Ashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Ashkivenu, Shalom. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.